Hey guys, what is up? You know, this is the week of Fantastic Four, and I know that honestly, it might even be too late to do a spoiler conversation about Superman, but I really did enjoy this movie, and I really wanted to see it again before I really drop my spoiler thoughts, and I haven't got to. I haven't had the ability to see it for a second time, and I really hope before the movie is done in its run, in its theater run, I really hope that I can see it even 3 times in the theater. But I know that this is probably the last week where I can really get this video out there and have it matter in some kind of way. And so I just wanted to have my spoiler thoughts on not just what I thought about the movie, but what I thought about the world they set up within the DC universe and the possible future possibilities that we could be seeing going forward. So, without further ado, let's get into it. You know, the very first thing is the crawl. The opening crawl I thought was super special, and honestly, I wouldn't mind seeing that in more DC movies. I wouldn't honestly be against it being almost in every DC movie. Now, that may not be a wise decision, but to me, it was perfect, at least for this movie, and I really did appreciate it. And what was special about it was I can remember back when Avengers came out, the very first Avengers movie. And there was people when I was younger who had made fun of me for being interested in all these things, you know, and imagination and all these creative things. And when Avengers came out, those same people were giving me a phone call asking me if I could explain Thanos to them. And they were so excited about this world that they had never been introduced to before, or they always thought was corny or whatever. And you know, over the years, you get those phone calls, but that has kind of went away. And that hasn't really been a thing in a couple years for me where people aren't calling me, asking me, hey, do you know this? Or what about this? Or what about that? And that happened with this movie. I had phone calls from people asking me, like, hey, what does that 300 years mean? You know, what different characters could we be seeing in this universe? And a lot of the different questions they asked started because of that opening crawl. And so I just thought it was really special, and it really does make you wonder what we could be seeing from this universe, because we know they're working on a Sergeant Rock movie, but they established that at least for 300 years was the first time something was ever recorded. So we could be seeing a lot more than that. And it does make you wonder what we could be seeing from this universe. What time periods could we be in for different movies? And it really opens that possibility of us seeing some new creative things from Warner Brothers, from DC Studios. And it just makes me excited as a fan to dive deeper into this world and setting it up more like a Star Wars kind of universe versus a Marvel universe. I think is going to really leave the door open for really creative possibilities that I just can't wait to see us explore. And it does make you wonder, you know, I know that James Gunn is a writer's first kind of, you know, when it comes to DC Studios, he definitely pushes writers first. And I like that idea. I think it's going to promise us a lot of great things in the future. But it does make me wonder, do they have a lore master? Do they have someone overseeing certain particular things in the universe? Or do they feel like that would constrain the writers from being able to tell really good stories? Because I do hope that continuity is important to them, but I do hope they leave things open, you know, before writers can even dive into it. They're not telling them, oh, well, this thing happened, so you can't do a story about this. I really hope they leave the writers open to tell stories they want to tell, while maybe having certain things that are super important that the writers have to abide by. I think that will keep things together, and it just, the possibilities of that I find super interesting. Now, we got to talk about the power of Superman. And, you know, there was a lot of back and forth on this, you know, and people were upset, you know, how the movie even starts off. Some people were. I was okay with it. I thought the points that James Gunn was trying to make in that, it worked for me. And it shows really how powerful Superman really is, because you do not only just see his power in the movie, but you also realize the first time he loses is to a clone of himself. So it's not like it's this situation where, he's, losing every time. This was the first battle he ever lost, period. And once he, got used to the situation, understood what was going on through the end of the movie, he rocked house. Like, he took care of everybody. Like, they weren't a challenge for him. So it still shows how powerful Superman is, but I can understand how some people had an issue with the way the movie started out, with him being hurt. And, it is what it is, but for me, it worked. I didn't have a problem with it. But I guess it will be something that next time they'll definitely want to make sure that he gets some really cool moments to show truly how powerful he is. Which we have to, if you're watching the movie, you saw how powerful the man is. But is he like Man of Steel powerful? I don't think so. But I'm kind of okay with that. I want Superman to be the most powerful in the universe, which they establish it in that crawl. But do I want him to be so powerful that literally nothing else is an obstacle and really no one else is needed? I can't say that I want that either. So I like this middle ground they went with Superman. And as long as they keep him the most powerful over everyone, and as far as superheroes go in the universe, I think I'll be happy with that. Now, we got to talk about Krypto, because Krypto does work, and Krypto is, adorable and sweet and playful and destructive and all those different things. And, to me, Krypto is a vessel for two things. One, yeah, it's adorable, kids like it, all those things. I think Krypto plushies are going to blow up in the near future, toy sales, all the stuff like that. But it really shows how great of a person Superman is when Krypto's kidnapped and he's talking to Lois, and it's like, why are you going after this dog? And he admits, he's like, well, he's not even a good dog, but he's alone and he's scared, and I'm not gonna leave him. I'm not gonna abandon this dog. I'm gonna go save him. I think that showed the quality of who Superman is, and it showed his character and about how much he values life, even if that life is kind of annoying to him, And it's exciting to see what we're going to see with him in the future. Like, not just they're going to do a Christmas special, I believe, but also with Supergirl. Supergirl, the ending with her, let's just get into that. I thought, was good. It was funny. It does get into a conversation about if it's being for kids or not, because there was a couple times in the movie where there was some language. Mr. Terrific says this, something that he says about how he is, GD terrific. He's GD Mr. Terrific. And then Supergirl, calling Superman, the thing that she calls him. It's one of those things where it's like, I hope James Gunn understands that, yes, there's a lot of people that are going to let their kids watch these movies no matter what it says. And maybe even more parents will let their kids watch it once it's out on, Blu-ray, or, let's just be honest, a streaming service. But a lot of parents don't like that. And a lot of parents are not going to take their kids to a movie that has that in there. And it was one of those things where it's like, it was funny. The scene was funny with Supergirl. It was funny. Where she's drunk and all those things. And I don't mind that, because I know the story they're leading towards. I know they're going towards the Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow, where she's going to have a character arc that hopefully she'll rise above that drunkenness at the end of that movie. But when it comes to parents, this was like the movie that probably should have been the most for kids. And I have had a little bit of a hard time necessarily telling parents, like, yeah, totally take your kid to see this. I've had to ask them questions like, hey, do you let your kids watch this, this, and this? And if they say yes, then I'll be like, well, you probably have no problem with it. And if they say no, then I'll be like, well, these things happen in the movie without giving spoilers away. These words are used, so you choose if you want to see the movie or not. And I don't know. I felt like if there was ever a movie that should have been like, the most kid-friendly possible. And if this is the most kid-friendly possible thing that DC's ever going to come out with, it kind of makes me wonder how open it's going to be for kids in the future. But that was just me. I am excited to see Supergirl in the future. I'm excited to see the complexities of her because she's going to have a different situation than Clark's going to have. And so, it makes me interested to dive deeper into that and also see, because of something that happens in the movie, which we're about to talk about, it is interesting for me to see her Kryptonian heritage and the way she grew up and her parents that we know are going to be in her movie. I'm kind of curious to see how deep they're going to dive into the Kryptonian lore and their philosophies and their mentality when it comes to other people, other species, and them themselves as they're basically facing ultimate destruction, which will be kind of interesting to me. And like I said, the reason I bring that up is dealing with the El controversy. The Jor-El controversy, where Jor-El basically tells Clark to go and basically make as many babies as possible. And, people view it as them making him absolutely evil. And to me, it felt like he was basically like, hey, you just need to make as many babies as possible because we got to survive. You got to make sure that Kryptonians, the biology of a Kryptonian lives on for a long, long time. And maybe that makes him kind of evil, but it doesn't make him like Hitler, And I do understand some people's issues with that. I personally had an issue with it at first. I've kind of worked around it. It's like, okay, well, this is the story they're telling. And it does kind of set up the idea that Superman is who Superman is because of the choices that Superman has made for himself. And maybe there's some nurture involved when it came to him being raised by the Kents. I think that's a big possibility that the Kents have a lot to do with his morality. But the El controversy was something I could look past because, to me, I could understand the point that he was trying to make. Now, if they change it in the future, I think a lot of people were not happy with it. So if they do change it in the future, that also won't bother me. It kind of makes me think that we're not going to see much of them at all. And it does make you wonder if instead of doing like a Zod situation, what if they do like a Jor-El type thing where Jor-El somehow survived Krypton's explosion and he comes back and maybe Jor-El might be a villain. I don't know if they'll go that direction, but it does kind of make you wonder, the possibilities, what they could do in the future. Now, getting into villains and getting into kind of the main plot points with Lex Luthor, I really enjoy, I've heard this from other people too, how much a hater Lex Luthor is. I still think Michael Rosenbaum might be probably one of my favorite Lex Luthors. You have the cartoon, which is probably the best interpretation. So Nicholas Hoult at the moment might be third place when it comes to the original animated series. Then you have Michael Rosenbaum, and then you have this version. But give me a couple more movies, Nicholas Hoult might jump up there in the future. To me, Lex Luthor should probably be a little bit even more stoic than Superman is at certain times, until he really lashes out and shows his hate. But he did do a good job showing how much of a hater he was. It was the whole dropping of the pins on the ground and making people pick it up was super funny. And he's almost a wizard, man. Like, the fact he is so intelligent, he is so smart, that he's able to make this, like, interdimensional plane of existence that he can travel through, and he can have operations in, he can have a prison there. Just shows how dangerous Lex Luthor really is. And a lot of the older Superman movies never really showed me how Lex Luthor could compete with Superman. This movie really shows me how Lex Luthor can compete with Superman, and I absolutely loved it. I absolutely loved it. And the fact that he had been studying Superman so much that he knew, he literally made an algorithm on how to beat the snot out of Superman was just fantastic. I thought that was beautiful in the most horrid sense, and it was just really cool. With the interdimensional travel aspect of it, I do wonder how far they're going to go with that into the future. I don't know if they'll do boom tubes or not, if they'll set up mother boxes in this universe or not. I would hope they would. I hope they wouldn't be against that. I have seen something about James Gunn being against certain ideas like teleportation and time travel. But those things are in your universe, so maybe it's not something you want to personally play with. But I hope you don't go against something like a boom tube, other things in the future, because like dealing with the Watchtower, for example. Eventually, I know we have the Hall of Justice, but eventually we may get a Watchtower in the DCU universe. And when you finally get that, you're going to have some sort of teleportation involved. And if it's just the Zeta beams, fine. But I hope they don't go against that or go away from that just because that's something that James Gunn doesn't like. And if he has to view it as just interdimensional travel for him to be okay with it, that's fine. But I hope they don't go away from certain things that truly do work within the DC universe that makes it special and also makes it different between, this and, something like the Marvel universe. Now, was Superman too whiny for me? You have the aspects where Superman is dealing with Lex Luthor, and then you have the aspects where Superman is dealing with Lois. And to me, both times weren't an issue, especially seeing the context of the movie. To me, Superman, when he's getting interviewed by Lois, he's with someone that he's comfortable with. He's with someone that he trusts, that he loves, that he cares for. And so he trusts that she is not going to do certain things, I guess, but more he's vulnerable with her. When you're vulnerable with someone, you're going to act a little differently with them than you're going to act with someone else. You're going to act a little more comfortable. I was talking to my buddy about this the other day, and I said, dude, if me and you were having a debate about something, I probably would act a little more outlandish with you than I would with someone else because I'm comfortable with you. And to me, I didn't have a problem with it. Now, did James Gunn maybe make him a little too whiny? It's a possibility. But, and maybe that's something that they need to look at in the future. But there was reasons to do what he did. Same thing for, when he had the conversations with Lex Luthor about the dog, or when he challenges Lex Luthor at the end about his morality and who he is as a person. To me, both of those times, he's expressing himself, but he's not going to go any further than that. And so, personally, I never had an issue with it. To me, with the dog missing specifically, and we've all seen the scene where he, barges in, kicks the door open, yelling at him about where's the dog. To me, that was him just showing his force and basically being like bad cop versus good cop. Because he calms down and goes, where's the dog? And really, I think he was just trying to overwhelm Lex. And he realized that Lex is not someone that can be easily overwhelmed. And, as far as Lois and Clark's relationship, I thought it was good. I hope we see some more things in the future. It really did feel like they actually cared about each other, which I appreciated. And I'm glad they did give her some different scenes. I thought Lois would be funnier. And maybe that's just because me watching Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. I hope they leave the door open for her to be funny in the future. But she seems pretty confident as a character. And I guess it just wasn't something they focused too much on with her. Because she was supposed to be kind of this person who challenges Superman on his beliefs and what he really stands for. So it didn't bother me that bad, I guess. Jimmy, being a player who doesn't really realize why girls are interested in him, nor does anybody else in the Daily Planet, but then for some reason they are, is pretty funny. I know some people thought that, he was a little bit of a misogynist, I guess, but it's like, let the story play out, let him have an arc, and I don't know, it was just funny. It was just funny to me. I was totally cool with it. I hope we see more of Jimmy Olsen in the future. I know there is some things out there about him possibly getting his own show, which the premise of was super interesting, dealing with like an anthology type thing where he goes and interviews different DC villains. I have a feeling Snowflame, if you know, you know. I'm feeling that Snowflame is going to be in that somehow. But I don't know. There was just something unique and special about that. And his character really shined out of all the Daily Planet characters. And so I really do hope we see more from him in the future. But his whole arc and the girl that dated, I'm blanking on her name, the girl that dated Lex Luthor being the thing that basically, you know, undermines Lex Luthor's plans and gets him caught with her taking selfies. I just thought it was great. And just their dynamic together and just made it really funny. And I hope she's involved with Jimmy Olsen's series as well. I hope he's stuck with her if he wants to be or not. The Justice Gang was cool. Like I said, the most interesting thing about the Justice Gang for me personally, besides the fact that I felt like the characters really did work and they shined in the movie, was the possibilities again for the future of this universe. When you're in the Hall of Justice and you're seeing all the painting, the mural on the wall, and the different heroes that could or could not be in that, like Wildcat and Dr. Fate and some of the other characters, like Atomic Knight I think was in there, and Vibe. It just kind of shows you the history of heroes throughout the years in the times that they probably fit better in, you know? I don't know if Vibe works now, but Vibe in the 80s totally works, and I'm totally open to seeing that character show up in its own 80s kind of thing. To me, that sounds like a really cool possibility. But back to the characters they did show us in the Justice Gang, really cool. Mr. Terrific was awesome. I mean, I've always wanted. I remember I didn't like the story as far as the end goes, but Tom King's Strange Adventures story shows how cool Mr. Terrific can be. Now, I wasn't a fan of the story, specifically the ending of the story, and I'm really nervous that they are going to make that a story that we're going to follow in the DC universe, and I'm going to be really disappointed because I think Adam Strange is a really cool character, and I do think they're going to ruin that character like they did in that story. But Mr. Terrific, I remember reading that story, and Mr. Terrific's T-Spheres flying everywhere and beating everybody up, and to see that happen in the movie was just so cool. It was just so cool. And I think I had talked about this in my review, but him having the coolest scene out of everybody, it's cool. I'm happy about it. But it's like, man, and Superman had some cool scenes. Don't get me wrong. Superman had some awesome scenes. But Mr. Terrific had the best scene. And you do kind of wonder, when it comes to this being a Superman movie, shouldn't he have the best scene? But you don't want to make a scene worse. It's just cool. And maybe it's just because it's not something we've ever seen before. But his fight scene was awesome. And the way that he handled Mr. Terrific, I thought was incredible. I can't wait. Another thing that people are talking about is a possibility of a movie or a show for him. I can't wait to see more of him in the future. He really won me over for an actor that I actually questioned if he should be Mr. Terrific in the first place. He won me over. I was really happy about it. Guy Gardner, fantastic. I can't wait to see what he does in Lanterns. The possibilities, again, just open, flourish. The way that he used the Green Lantern ability showed how cool a Green Lantern could be, and I really, really dug it. I really dug it. And it took someone like James Gunn to show how cool a Green Lantern really could be, and I can't wait to see more of that in the future. Metamorpho, really cool. That was something I also had phone calls asking about. Baby Joey, which I didn't know much about Baby Joey, and so I had to look up things about Baby Joey. Which, again, is just cool. It's cool when I get phone calls from people who aren't as nerdy as me about all these things, and they're calling me going, hey, can you explain this to me? And then when I don't even know the answer, I have to go look it up, and then I become a fan of a new character I didn't even know about. That's why I love DC Universe. That's why I love this world, getting to dive deeper into things like that. I mentioned the world building. There's a lot of things in the future I hope we get to see. some things they set up with the villains when it comes to Planet Watch. I do kind of wonder if eventually they were going to call it Stormwatch, and maybe they did a different shoot where they called it Planet Watch just in case they weren't ready to go that direction with Stormwatch. But I do kind of hope that Planet Watch turns into Stormwatch in the future, because then eventually we'll get what we know as the Authority, which will definitely should not be for kids, hopefully. And I'm definitely excited to see, what we could get from that in the future with those characters, like the Engineer, like Apollo, like all the other characters that you know of, Midnighter, all the different characters from that universe. I hope we get to see more of them. Ultraman. Now, this was a thing that kind of bothered me at first, and the more I've thought about it, the more I'm okay with it. I thought it was a missed opportunity just making him a simple clone of Superman. The fact that they didn't go that extra step in making him Bizarro or making him something else, I thought they should have made him Bizarro. And I still think there's a chance he will be Bizarro. So, to me, go ahead and teasing the layers of him possibly being Bizarro could have worked for me personally. They didn't go that direction with it. He goes into the black hole. They have the possibility to bring him back, and they have the possibility not to bring him back. I hope they bring him back, and when they do, I really hope he is Bizarro, because that was a missed opportunity, I think, personally. And I just think it'd be cool. I think it'd be cool to see David Gordon Sweat play Bizarro as well, or maybe do enough prosthetics after he goes through the wormhole. Maybe his body changes and deteriorates in such a way we're really going to have a brand new actor play the role of Bizarro and just mimic some of the attributes of David Gordon Sweat. But either way, I'll be excited about that. But his reveal that he's just a clone, like I said, a little disappointing, but it'll be okay, because I do think in the future they're going to pay it off in a big way where he will be the character that we know as Bizarro. That's what I'm hoping for. I'm hoping for that. Am I open to him being Ultraman from the Earth 3? I guess, but not really. I really am actually, after watching this movie, I'm really even more open to eventually seeing Earth 3, the Crime Syndicate. And what I would love to see is basically the different version of Superman who maybe followed the advice of his parents and made a harem and really became a crappy person. I don't know, like, that possibility just sounds super interesting to me. And so not only would you have the Crime Syndicate, but you would have a bunch of baby super soldiers, I guess. That would be Ultraman's children. I don't know, there's something about that just sounds super interesting, and I'm super open to that possibility. And getting into that, when it comes to Superman's values and who he is as a person, I thought this movie, maybe it was too light, maybe. But I think it explained enough on who he is as a person, that he does care about human life. He does care about life in general. He cares about people. He, does believe in kindness. Doesn't mean that he's always nice to everyone no matter what, but I think he truly does care about people. And it just showed how special of a person he was. And the Kents. The Kents were amazing. Ma Kent, Tennessee native, shout out to her. Chattanooga born and bred, I guess. But she was fantastic. Paul Kent was fantastic. And I loved the fact that they were more like grandparents almost. And I think a lot of people can relate to that, because we live in a time where a lot of people are raised by their grandparents. And, you have a different relationship with someone like that than you would even having someone 20 years older than you, like maybe most parents are. I don't know, there was just something special about them, and I really hope we see them in the future. I hope we see them for the Christmas special. I want to see more of the Kents. That actually would be one of my biggest criticisms, is that we didn't have time with the Kents. And, you do have that phone scene with Ma Kent where a lot of people were saying that she looked dumb. I just viewed that as classic older person who doesn't know their phones. I have a lot of older people in my life, and a lot of them struggle with their phones. It ain't nothing about being from the South or being from the country. It's a different time, and they're just older people, and that's okay. I do think to have verisimilitude, though, if you would have had more time with them, you could have seen how wise they really are and how much wisdom they really have, and I think that would have been really special. And, again, that balance between nature and nurture, I think it was really shown with them and showed how much they truly do love them. And I do think something like that is really, really special. Which, again, brings me to the excitement of this future that we're going to be in with the DC Universe. I do hope that we get a different Batman. I don't want Robert Pattinson Batman in this universe. I like where Robert Pattinson is as a character, his dynamic that he's in with his universe. I want that separate. I don't want that to be here. But I guess it will maybe depend on how much money they really make. Because if they don't make enough money, maybe Zaslav's going to look at him and go, no, you have to do this. Or maybe he'll go, you know what? Keep it separate. Let's see if your thing can work out. We know this thing makes money, so let's just leave it alone because maybe it could affect this if we force it to be a part of this other thing. I don't know, but I really hope we get a different one. I'm hoping for Brandon Sklenar. I watched 1923. I thought he was fantastic. I've seen some other things with him that make me open to the idea of him being our new Batman. I've seen some other people too that I found interesting that looked like Batman as well. So I'm kind of open to it. I trust James Gunn, but it does make you wonder what the future we're really going to have with this universe, and what are all these secret projects that they're working on. Could we be seeing Batman sooner than we think? I really hope we do. I hope we see him in Clayface, and I hope we see Superman sooner than later as well. But guys, that I think will do it for me. There's a lot I hope we see in the future, and we'll be seeing some things very soon when it comes to Peacemaker. And I'm trying to decide how I'll handle Peacemaker. I don't know if I'll do a breakdown of every episode or not. It depends if I'm enjoying it. But guys, let me know in the comments what you want me to do. If you stayed here for this long, I have to thank you. I knew this was a longer video, but there was a lot that I wanted to talk about, and I probably didn't even hit on everything that I would want to talk about. But guys, I think that will do it for me. Whatever you're doing, wherever you're going, I hope you're having a good one. Peace.